Over the past month, the skies over Iran and Israel have been anything but calm. Military jets, missile barrages, and diplomatic maneuvers have once again thrust these two nations into the global spotlight. As each airstrike fuels the fires of a decades-old conflict, one question looms larger than ever. Is the Middle East on the brink of a new, far-reaching war? Today we're breaking down the latest developments between Israel and Iran. From recent airstrikes to political reactions, we'll dive into the critical events and decisions shaping this crisis and what they could mean for regional and global stability. Let's begin by taking a step back to understand the historical context and the tensions that have led us to this point. The relationship between Israel and Iran has been fraught with rivalry and hostility for decades. Both nations have engaged in indirect warfare, often through proxies and limited military skirmishes. But on October 26th, the conflict took on a new dimension as Israel launched Operation Days of Repentance, a strategic airstrike targeting Iranian military installations. According to the Times of India, this operation was in response to an October 1st missile attack on Israel, allegedly launched by Iran. Israel's airstrike involved over 100 fighter jets, including advanced F-35s, aimed at dismantling Iran's missile manufacturing capabilities and military infrastructure. This high-intensity assault marked a critical escalation as Israel sought to send a strong message to Tehran. This wasn't just about retaliation, it was a show of force, underscoring Israel's commitment to national security and its readiness to act decisively against perceived threats. With mounting tensions, both nations find themselves on high alert. Israel's Defense Forces chief, Lieutenant General Herzi Halevi, emphasized that the recent airstrike was only a fraction of what Israel is prepared to do if tensions continue. In a statement to the Times of Israel, Lieutenant General Halevi declared, "We have the ability to do much more," underscoring Israel's extensive military capabilities. He revealed that the IDF targeted critical military systems in Iran, including drone and ballistic missile production facilities. In a post on X.com, the official account for the Israeli Air Force shared a striking message, accompanied by images of their aircraft, saying, "We will do whatever it takes to protect the people of Israel." This public display highlights not only Israel's military power but also its determination to defend against any threat. By choosing to conduct limited but strategic strikes, Israel signals that it's prepared for an even larger confrontation should the need arise. Yet, questions remain: how will Iran respond? Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, addressed the Israeli airstrikes in a speech that reflected a complex mix of caution and resolve. According to the New York Times, Khamenei urged restraint, stating that the attacks should neither be exaggerated nor downplayed, but he reinforced Iran's right to defend itself if necessary. This restrained response, according to analysts, may reflect Iran's interest in avoiding a full-scale conflict at least for now. Iranian former Foreign Minister Javad Zarif echoed this sentiment in a tweet, honoring the brave air defense officers of the Iranian army who were involved in the recent skirmishes, but also calling for a long-term approach that prioritizes Iran's sovereignty and peace for the region. The Iranian leadership's cautious response may be a calculated move, balancing domestic expectations with the risks of an all-out war. Tehran's leadership seems intent on avoiding a conflict that could spiral into a larger regional crisis, yet it remains resolute in its stance. With tensions rising, the United Nations Security Council scheduled an emergency meeting at Iran's request, supported by allies like China, Russia, and Algeria. This meeting, reported by France 24, highlights the international community's concern over the situation and the potential repercussions of an unchecked escalation. The United Nations and major global players, including the US, have called for restraint on both sides. Countries like Iraq have also voiced their concerns, filing an official complaint with the UN over Israel's use of its airspace during recent strikes. This international involvement illustrates the wider stakes of this conflict, as nations attempt to mediate and prevent further destabilization in the Middle East. The Security Council's discussions reflect a growing awareness that this is not just a bilateral conflict, but one that impacts the entire region and beyond. While the geopolitical chessboard remains the focus of headlines, the human impact of these military actions is a sobering reality. Israeli strikes in Gaza have resulted in civilian casualties, displacing thousands and devastating local communities. According to the Washington Post, the ongoing violence has left over 42,000 dead and tens of thousands injured, with the Gaza Health Ministry reporting one of the highest casualty rates in recent years. The humanitarian cost of this conflict extends beyond numbers. Families have been uprooted, homes destroyed, and entire neighborhoods leveled. International humanitarian agencies are calling for immediate action to address the crisis, emphasizing the need for an urgent ceasefire to allow aid to reach those affected. As the region grapples with the fallout, the people of Gaza bear the brunt of this conflict, paying a heavy price as world leaders debate solutions. On the ground in Israel and Iran, public perceptions of the conflict show marked differences. In Israel, the government's response has received broad support, with citizens rallying behind the IDF's operations. In a tweet by Israel's government account, images of female pilots who participated in the airstrikes were shared, highlighting Israel's inclusion and unity in the face of external threats. Meanwhile, in Tehran, citizens reportedly resumed their daily lives soon after the airstrikes, a reflection of resilience or perhaps indifference in the face of recurring military threats. According to the Washington Post, economic issues remain a central concern for many Iranians, overshadowing military events in public discourse. These contrasting reactions underscore the varying priorities and sentiments in both nations, with each side holding a distinct perspective on the evolving crisis. The current conflict is reshaping power dynamics in the Middle East. The New York Times reports that Israel, traditionally supported by the U.S., is now stepping up as a dominant regional power, while the Biden administration takes a more restrained approach. Analysts suggest that Israel's decision to act more independently in recent months may reflect a desire to establish itself as a stronghold of stability in the region, filling a perceived power vacuum. This shift could have lasting consequences for U.S.-Israel relations. With upcoming presidential elections in the U.S., the future of this alliance could hinge on the outcome. Should leadership change, America's approach to Middle Eastern conflicts might also shift, with significant implications for Israel's military strategy. In a region already marked by complex alliances, Israel's bold stance could inspire other nations to reconsider their roles in regional security, especially as Iran and its allies continue to wield significant influence. Despite the escalations, there remains a glimmer of hope for a peaceful resolution. Egypt recently proposed a ceasefire, suggesting a temporary truce to allow humanitarian aid and potential prisoner exchanges. However, according to the BBC, these negotiations have faced challenges, with Hamas rejecting the terms of the ceasefire and insisting on a more comprehensive agreement. Analyst Eliav Lieblich expressed a critical view in his recent piece on just security, stating that these military actions might serve political purposes but do little to advance peace. In a tweet, Lieblich highlighted the broader implications of international law failures, urging nations to look beyond immediate military victories toward a stable future for the region. The question remains, will these calls for peace resonate with leaders in Tehran and Jerusalem? Or are we witnessing the early stages of a prolonged, deeper conflict? As tensions between Israel and Iran continue to simmer, the world watches closely. This complex and often volatile relationship has implications far beyond the Middle East. The decisions made in the coming days and weeks could shape the future of the region, impacting global alliances and potentially redrawing the geopolitical map. For now, it's a waiting game. Will diplomacy prevail, or are we on the brink of a major shift in Middle Eastern politics? Let us know your thoughts on these developments in the comments. And if you found this analysis insightful, don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more updates on international affairs.